Hello and welcome. This is our explainer on the Introduction to Risk Management Frameworks, brought to you by EasyPathUni in coordination with Yazan Ibrahim. We're going to keep things really simple and interactive, kind of like what you'd see on Coursera or Udemy. And we'll use a bunch of real-world examples so these ideas actually make sense. All right, let's get right into it.
So you've probably heard people talk about living in a VUCA world, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. But honestly, that feels a little out of date now. The world we're actually in is a BANI world. B is for brittle, meaning things can just completely shatter with no warning. A stands for the anxiety that you can just feel everywhere. N is for nonlinear, where cause and effect are totally scrambled. And I is for incomprehensible, where things happen that just don't make any sense. This isn't just a slight change. It's a whole new level of chaos, and it needs a new playbook.
Which, brings us to the million-dollar question. In a world that's basically defined by chaos, how on earth are you supposed to lead? How do you make any decision with real confidence when the ground is literally shifting under your feet every single day?
Well, the answer isn't to just hide and hope for the best. It's to build a system specifically designed to navigate the chaos. And that's exactly what a modern risk management framework, or RMF, is. Now, don't think of this as some boring, dusty rulebook. Think of it more like a strategic GPS for your organization. It's this dynamic tool that helps you see what's coming, prepare for the twists and turns, and even spot opportunities that everyone else is too scared to see.
So, how do we actually build this GPS? Well, like with anything important, you have to start with a really solid foundation. And for a risk management framework, that foundation is all about defining the rules of the road and making it crystal clear who is responsible for what.
A really popular way to structure this is using what's called the 3 lines model. So your first line, that's your operational teams, the people doing the day-to-day work. Think of a project manager who owns the risk of that project falling behind schedule. Then you have the second line. These are your risk and compliance experts. Their job is to oversee and challenge the first line. And finally, the third line is your internal audit team. They provide totally independent assurance to the board and leadership that the whole system is actually working the way it's supposed to. It's all about creating layers of defense and clear accountability.
And let me be clear, this is not just some academic exercise. The stakes are getting incredibly high, and they're getting personal. New regulations, like the EU's big cybersecurity directive NIS2, are now putting direct legal liability on senior managers. I mean, just look at that quote. We're talking about individuals facing a ban from leadership roles. So getting risk wrong isn't just a problem for the company anymore. It can literally be a career ender.
Now, to manage risk well, everybody has to be speaking the same language. So let's quickly nail down 3 terms that often get mixed up. First, risk appetite. That's how much risk you're willing to chase to get to your goals. Next is risk tolerance. That's your wiggle room, how far off that target you're okay with going. And finally, risk capacity. This one's the biggie. It's the absolute maximum amount of risk you can take on before the whole thing collapses. Knowing the difference between what you want to do and what you can survive doing is absolutely fundamental.
And speaking of risk, the very definition of what counts as risk is expanding like crazy. Take ESG, environmental, social, and governance. For a long time, this was kind of a nice to have. Not anymore. It's becoming a core part of business. With new rules like the EU's CSRD, companies have to report on double materiality. That basically means you have to talk about your impact on the planet and how the planet's issues could impact your bottom line. Suddenly, ESG isn't just an ethical issue, it's a massive legal and reputational risk.
Okay, so we've laid the foundation with all the rules and roles. Now let's pop the hood and look at the engine that actually powers this thing, the active, ongoing process of managing risk out in the real world. At the very heart of this engine is a simple 4-step cycle. First, you identify potential risks. You're always scanning the horizon. Then, you analyze them to really understand what they could do. After that, you evaluate them against your risk appetite to figure out which ones you need to worry about most. And finally, you treat the risk. You might try to avoid it, reduce it, transfer it with something like insurance, or just consciously accept it. And the key thing is, this isn't a one-and-done checklist. It's a continuous loop.
And here's where things get really exciting. Today, this whole cycle is being supercharged with technology. We're talking AI, machine learning, predictive analytics, you name it. Instead of just looking backward at what went wrong, these tools can sift through enormous piles of data to spot risks before they even become risks. It's a total game changer, shifting risk management from being reactive to being truly proactive.
But all this great process
doesn't mean much if it's stuck in its own little bubble. The real goal is to integrate risk thinking into the DNA of the company, into every single decision. That's where these modern GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance platforms are so powerful. They connect everything, from the highest level strategy discussions right down to what people are doing day to day.
So, we've got the rules, we've got the engine, but a high-performance car is pretty useless without a skilled driver, right? That brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of the puzzle, the human ecosystem. It's the culture that actually brings the whole framework to life.
And the absolute bedrock of a great risk culture is something called psychological safety. All this really means is creating a place where anyone, from the CEO to an intern, feels safe enough to raise their hand and say, hey, I think I messed up, or, I'm really worried about this plan, without any fear of being blamed or punished. Because if people are afraid to speak up, your framework is flying blind. Your people are your #1 early warning system.
So, how do you actually build that? Well, it absolutely has to start at the top, with leaders who don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk. It means providing ongoing training that's specific to what people do. You have to give them safe, even anonymous, ways to report problems. And here's a big one. You have to start rewarding people for spotting risks early, not just for cleaning up messes.
And just like the culture needs to grow, the framework itself can't be set in stone. It has to be a living, breathing thing. The world changes, so your RMF has to change with it. That means you're always monitoring it, you're stress testing it against crazy future what-if scenarios, and you're constantly reviewing it to make sure it's ready for whatever's next. Okay, so we've covered the foundation, the process, and the culture. Let's tie this all together and talk about the payoff. Why go through all this trouble? What's the real strategic advantage here?
A really well-built, modern RMF delivers some incredible benefits. It makes your whole organization more resilient, so you can take a punch and get right back up. It leads to way smarter, data-backed decisions. It builds a ton of confidence with your investors, your customers, everyone. But maybe the biggest payoff is this. It helps you flip the script on risk. Instead of something to be afraid of, it becomes a source of competitive advantage, letting you make smart, calculated bets that your competitors are too scared to touch.
And that's really the final thought I want to leave you with. Just take a second and think about your own organization. Is its whole approach to risk about defense, about just trying to avoid bad things from happening? Or is it playing offense? Is it actively using risk management to build the resilience and the agility it needs to actually win in this crazy, bonny world? The answer to that question could very well define its future.